Hello, everybody. Welcome back to All Our Parts. I am so excited for my guest today. She is a New York therapist, private practice owner, Lauren Caruso. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
So, we were talking a bit offline, and I asked her to pivot from the usual, both of us really cover attachment relational content, like in our on social media, through our podcast. And so I brought up the idea to her to discuss self-preservation in this very unpredictable, chaotic, ever-evolving political climate that we are in right now.
We love a good pivot. And I think this is so necessary right now.
Absolutely. It's right now, and I think so many of us are, as people, are trying to figure out how do we stay afloat? How do we still enjoy pieces of our lives while staying engaged and speaking up for what is happening right now, which is absolute chaos,
To say the least.
putting it lightly.
It reminds me actually something that you just said. I saw this post recently that talked about even in the darkest of times, people were still like falling in love, hanging out with their
Mhm.
friends, going to work. And it's this weird, like cognitive dissonance type feeling almost where the world is actively feels like it's falling apart. And then you have to get up and go to work the next day.
Yeah, sometimes it feels like dissociative, and then other times it feels okay, but I also do the things that we recommend our clients to do the things that feel lighter. And I have found myself feeling much more tired lately. Like it just
Hmm.
feeling so fatigued and feeling okay. This is what's going on right now, and I want to be aware because also being a practitioner that lives in DC, it's wrong for me to not know. I have to stay informed, and because so many of who I work with is impacted by this administration right now. And so it's okay. Stay involved, and I have to have the energy to show up for my clients, and I've got the energy to show up for myself as a person, and it's toggling this like back and forth almost. But I loved also seeing so many of us pivot our content and make
Yeah.
space for the very real catastrophe that is happening right now in this world.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I'm a relationship therapist through and through. It's what my content has been about literally since I created the account. And then with everything that's happening, and I started becoming more vocal, especially during the election, that's when my account really started to shift. And like now in my bio, it says unapologetically vocal about social issues. So to change an entire platform that I've built over the past few years and then just say, nope, actually, that's not important anymore. It's still important, but it doesn't carry as much weight or value as, for example, the social impact conversations that we're having.
Yeah. What has that been like for you to experience that shift?
It's so funny because I had a social media manager. She was amazing. And she was with me for the past like year and a half. And so she rode through the election with me and the account and she ran through the analytics and she said, Laura, you were posting like 10 to 15 stories a day leading up to the election and you only lost 1,000 followers and you like gained 1,000 followers in a matter of 24 hours. So it's like the numbers aren't important, but it's interesting to see how they shift because a
Mm.
lot of people who did have platforms and then suddenly were vocal about politics lost a lot of that fan base and they left and they weren't interested in it. They didn't want to hear it and they just did their own thing and moved in a different direction. Or the people who were posting just stopped posting that political
Mm.
content. I didn't stop, but it also didn't really shift my account that much either because everyone kind of stayed. I
Mm.
built that community really brick by brick.
Yeah, and I think we can sometimes tell even before you become outright vocal about something, you can tell where people are leaning within their content, especially as things get more vague or more ambiguous. It's okay, what's going on here? But
Yeah.
cultivating that community of transparency very early on allows for us to make shifts as creators. And of course, there will be people that drop off and goodbye. Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to
We don't
stay.
want you here.
And the people who are interested and learning and staying for that part of us is also really important. I actually just recorded with Lauren Larkin last week, and we
Oh, I
talked
love her.
about how we as therapists are allowing ourselves the space to have many sides to ourselves, like within the content space.
Yeah, it's so funny. I just got dinner with Lauren Larkin last week, probably right before or after you guys recorded. No, it's so true. And it's so hard to make that space for ourselves. I don't know about you, but during my grad program, that's like what was drilled into our heads every day. Take care of yourself, have boundaries, work-life balance. What does self-care look like for therapists? And now, obviously, it's so necessary. And it was necessary back then too, but it's different now. We're responding in really different ways, like you said, fatigued and just exhausted, and we don't realize how much exposure impacts us, right? When we open Instagram, something that used to be
Hmm.
fun and light and silly, and now we open Instagram and it's, oh, Department of Education dismantled. Oh, there's just headline after headline, and now things that used to be fun and safe and almost stress relievers are now contributing to that overconsumption and exposure.
Yeah, I was thinking, as I was thinking about this topic, I was like, we live in a world where we are so exposed, like overly
Yeah,
exposed. We can open the news app, we can open Threads, we can open TikTok, we can open Instagram, we can open Facebook, we can open YouTube, and information is there and it is at our fingertips. And so it is very easy to get down the rabbit hole of what's going on, what's happening, like how can I get involved, how can I stay in tune. And sometimes, in order to preserve like us as people, in order to persevere this fight, it's got to be a long, we've got to think about longevity. We've got to think about, okay, what does it look like to sustain ourselves in this world right now? Because we don't want to burn out early on and forget about these things 3 years later. We want to
no,
still be equally as aggravated, frustrated, fired up 4 years from now. So
yeah,
it's like, what does it look like to be engaged, keep speaking up, and maintain?
yeah. I saw something recently where the advice was to pick one or two things you're really passionate about and focus on consuming that to the degree that you would want to, right? Where you're very vocal, you're very active, you're educating yourself, you're very invested in it. And then everything else, don't ignore it, right? But filter through it. So you don't need to deep dive into it because there's too many things to dive deep into right now. And that's impossible. If we try to know everything, we're actually not learning anything because you just can't. We don't have the bandwidth to. And I really liked that. I think the problem with that is right now it's like, where do you start? Like,
Mm.
which do you choose? There's too many things.
It's the double-edged sword of you can't be an expert at everything because right now it feels like if everything isn't being spoken up for, it will get taken away very quickly. And we are watching
Yeah.
things get taken away
Yeah.
very quickly.
Yeah. I love your emphasis too on what does the long-term vision look like, right? How do we make this sustainable? And I always tell clients, do really small things one at a time, right? So you're not going in and doing a whole lifestyle overhaul. That's not sustainable. You're never going to be able to pick up the habit. But maybe that means you're putting on do not disturb while you're at work or like
Mhm.
during daytime hours. So you're limiting your exposure. And then you're spending maybe 20 minutes scrolling through and reading headlines and reading articles and educating yourself. And then that's it. You pack it up, put it away, and then you do whatever else you want to do for the rest of the evening. Self care, do a puzzle, read a book, right? Something that's not tapped in to the internet and to the rest of the world outside of your four walls.
Yeah, it is. It's going to burn you out and it's going to cause depression. It's going to cause anxiety. It is going to elicit responses that it's going to be harder to regulate as times go on if we're not doing the small, like you said, the small sustainable lifestyle changes that lead to having a more consistent regulated nervous system. Because right now it's easy to read something and be like, what the fuck is
And
going
spiral.
on? I'm about to lose my mind. Okay, there's protests outside my house. Cool. But being able to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to read the news for an hour and then put the phone away for the weekend. Let
Yeah.
Sundays be a full reset day without the internet and just allowing, I think, real space to slow down.
Yeah. Something I'm talking a lot about lately is even just stimulation, right? So it used to be okay to have notifications on your phone
Mhm.
because you had capacity and bandwidth. And now, if we're running a bit more fatigued, if we're a bit more scattered and have a bit more brain fog, right, you're probably overstimulated and dysregulated more consistently. So think about what stimulation even means, right? I'm sitting in this room and there are three lights that are on. That's three different lights that are stimulating me. There's a lot of conversations online. I don't know if you're on this crazy algorithm like I am, but the like anti-big light where you turn the big lights
Oh, I
off and
hate
you
the big light.
hate it. I'm so anti big light. We're only sitting with low lighting because it's regulating to the nervous system. It's not fueling you with all of this exposure and all of this bright light and all of the senses too. We have
Hmm.
the podcast going, we have the music in the background. Even I get frustrated now with the dogs moving and like tippy tapping on the
Oh,
ground because I'm just overstimulated. It has nothing to do with the dogs.
that makes me feel like just less alone because I was getting to a point where I was like, God, I don't want to listen to music. Maybe I
Yeah.
just want to listen to a really funny podcast and or maybe I just want to drive in silence. But there were so many things that used to feel like these are things that help us unwind, help us decompress from the day, that sometimes start to feel really overstimulating and overwhelming. And that's where being consistent with what our body needs and being okay with that shift, being pretty present with it becomes really important. And it's okay to be like, you know what, today I need an audiobook. I just need
Mm-hmm.
me and a book and some quiet. I need no overhead light. I need natural light only.
Yeah.
Being able to make those adjustments and seeing the difference that it makes really is amazing.
I want to reinforce that idea of noticing what your body needs because we're so disconnected from our bodies and the current society as it's structured is to disconnect us, right? It benefits from our disconnection, our dysregulation. That's how the systems thrive. That's how they succeed on the oppressive end of it, but we don't thrive. Even being able to acknowledge this is something that I need right now, and then this feels like too much for me. Live in New York City. I have to walk my dog every day. I can't just open the back door. And I go for a long 30-minute walk at the end of the day. And I usually listen to an audiobook or a podcast. And sometimes that's just too much. Having to listen to someone else speak after I just spoke all day or after I was reading all day, it's too much sometimes to consume that much information. And so I'll put on like an instrumental type music or like music that I know the lyrics to and can sing every word and don't have to even think about it. It's just second
Mhm.
nature to me because I'm trying to limit that exposure and give my brain the break and my body the break that it deserves.
Yeah, I've definitely been leaning more into like cooking shows, low stakes, high reward. I don't have to pay attention and I will watch them like while I'm making breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so exciting. I'm feeling really creative and it is not overwhelming. It's not too much. And I'm like, that's where I am. I've had to sideline some of my reality TV that I love so dearly because I'm like, I love y'all and y'all are just, that's not where I am right now.
Yeah.
Um, and that's been okay. As you were talking, I was thinking about as we're creating these more sustainable shifts and we are slowing down, maintaining a sense of regulation, what does building community look like in this current climate right now? Or what does it look like to maintain community? Because sometimes we use that word and it sometimes can be like a buzzword almost, but what does real sustainable community in a climate that has us tired inevitably and needing to be really conscientious of our consumption in order to maintain and preserve? Like, a regulated, balanced nervous system.
I think community starts to feel a bit like the other pop psych buzzwords like boundaries,
Mhm.
narcissism, right? They get so twisted that the definition becomes very unclear. And it's influenced then by cultural norms that we have within our society. And we're a very individualistic society,
Mhm.
this Western world, right? So it's every man for themselves. You have to take care of yourself, your own individual success. Your individual success is prioritized over the needs of other people. And so this idea of community then has shifted. It's no longer about relationships with other people and maintaining relationships with other people. I feel like community is almost becoming a synonym for connection, and that's not
Mhm.
actually what it is. Community is support, right?
Mhm.
Community is care. It's taking care of the people around you, regardless of that connection, because you don't have to like your community. There are people in your community that's going to rub you the wrong way and you're not going to
Mhm.
like them. But it doesn't mean that you don't extend care. You actually grow and expand as a person when you are able to extend care to someone who maybe you don't really want to. Showing empathy, showing care for others makes you feel more fulfilled and more connected, regardless of whether you're connecting with that specific person or not.
I love that you mentioned that because, yeah, like community is inconvenient. And we confuse it sometimes for this thing that's going to be sometimes easy and seamless. And it's like we're all showing up for one another. And yes, and sometimes we've got to put our individualistic mindsets aside and say, okay, what's the best way that I can show up for this person while also maintaining my own capacity?
Yeah,
Like, those are
100%.
the two questions we've got to balance while doing it. A lot of us have had to be more conscientious of the community that we surround ourselves with, of the conversations, what consistent communication looks like, what quality time even looks, balancing all of those things and being like, okay, if this isn't a space that feels good for me right now, I don't necessarily need to cut it off. I can actually just create a different parameter around this like circumstance. Your DMs, for
Mm-hmm.
example, you
Oh, my DMs, for example. Let's talk about the DMs. Oh man, it's so true. You don't get to choose who's in your community, right? I get DMs from anyone and everyone, and not everyone is happy, right? Especially if I'm talking about social issues. And the funny part is the people who are unhappy in my DMs are the people who don't follow me, the people who
mm,
aren't actively a part of my community. They just want me to know how they feel. And you don't have to take care of everyone, but you do have to take care of your community. And that's why communities tend to be smaller, right?
mhm,
Society is the larger scale version of that. Community is your immediate surroundings, right? It's your people.
mhm,
And obviously, we talked about how it doesn't always include people that you love, right? But you can engage with that community and even the larger society differently. And you're supposed to engage differently as your needs start to shift, like how we engage with self care differently. We're going to need different things at different times. And that's our responsibility to notice when we're going to need to adapt or change something, right? Same for community. You don't have to be fully invested every single day, putting their needs before yours. You get to decide, is this something and someone that I really need to show up for right now? Or do I need to really prioritize myself right now? Or is there a
mm,
combination of both, right? It doesn't
mhm,
have to be so black and white either. We tend to always say this or. That's why I love when you
mhm.
said yes and, right? Two things can be true at the same time.
I try to live in the yes and as somebody who can get really stuck in all or nothing thinking. And
Mm-hmm.
even in relationships, I used to very much function in a space where we're either in it or we're not, and there's no in between. And as I think as we get older, as life happens, as we evolve, you realize actually there is a slew of gray that can exist in relationships, connection, and community. And the person that you see a couple times a year and the person that you talk to a couple times a year, all of those people like get to be a part of your community because your needs will shift, what you need out of your relationships will shift. Therefore, like being able to evolve with your relationships is like a really valuable thing.
And I feel like, cling onto consistency and stability. And it makes sense because that's where we feel safe, right? Once we figure something out, we don't need to deal with the unknowns anymore because we've locked it in, right? And then we hold on to it and don't allow any room for change. We become way too rigid. And then that hurts our relationships. I'm guilty of that. I think that ended all of my relationships in the past where I was too rigid. It happens, but we have to own that as humans and be able to identify when that's happening and playing out in real time and adapt.
My brain's, and this is where attachment wounds come in.
Yeah, the relational therapist in us. Here we are.
You can tune in to all our parts and the safe space if that is something you are interested in learning more about both of our podcasts. We love to yap about it, to dive deeper into attachment styles, how they are not fixed, and all the great things. Little
Yeah,
podcast plug while we're here.
love it. Women supporting women.
And that is becoming, I'm watching the new season of White Lotus right now.
Okay, I haven't watched any of White Lotus, so I don't
Okay.
know.
So there are three women on the latest season where they are long-term friends. And when one leaves the room, they make these snide comments. She's a narcissist, isn't she? And the other friend will think about it as to not engage, but then they say, oh, she's so into her vanity. And I'm like, gosh, that is how a lot of, sadly, how a lot of women friendships are. They are celebrating you in your face, and then they either, in the long run, want something from you, or there's some envy, some jealousy, or they're just not really supporting you.
It's
And
so
so
true.
watching their dynamic, it's because when they're together, they're like, "Ah, you're just the best. I love you. You're everything." And then when they ultimately separate or someone leaves the room, it's like she's having a divorce happen right now. And that shady shit is so, I watch it and I'm like, God, but that's not uncommon.
Yeah. It's those are the most unhappy people, the ones who immediately have to jump into a different alliance with someone else just so that, you can ostracize someone else. It's like that desire or need for connection to feel aligned with someone so desperately that you're willing to throw someone else under the bus. I don't even have a word to describe it. It's just that's the word that comes up.
That's one of my hard lines, I will say, as
Yeah,
learning over time. I'm like, it's
no,
like the world is hard enough as it is. Women supporting women, like if you're just in this for something or there's some envy, I'm okay. I've been in those spaces, and I believe it takes a lot of inner work to be someone where someone else's success is not a determining factor on your success, and recognizing there's enough space for everybody. I recognize the work that it takes to get there. And because I know I'm continuing to do the work, that it is valuable and necessary in those spaces.
yeah. And I love that you're owning that, right? We're not perfect, we're humans. And it's also just something that we're thrown into because that's what everyone else is doing,
Mm.
right? Think about middle school cafeteria. Miserable. That might be the worst place on this entire planet to ever be. And that's what you need to do for survival, right? Because if you're not talking about other people, they're talking about you. And what are they saying about you right now? They're getting the leg up. So you have to do it for survival. But then you get older and you realize it's actually not that important. Nobody really cares. And then it's our responsibility to pull back and stop doing that and start treating other people's with kindness at the
Mhm.
bare minimum. And it's just so confusing because when I see other women like tearing women down or talking negatively, I'm even thinking about, I'm going to throw my mom under the bus for a second, but my mom will watch a TV show and make comments about the women on the TV show. She doesn't know these people.
Mhm.
Why does it impact her so significantly to the point that she has to call it out and like actually vocally say something? And I don't have the time for that. I don't have the
Mhm.
energy for that. life is hard enough, right? Women are attacked enough. We're constantly fighting patriarchy, misogyny.
Mhm.
We're just trying to protect ourselves 24 hours of a day. I'm not going to protect myself from another woman. I don't have time for that.
And it actually feels so much easier to just celebrate the women in our
100%.
lives. Actually, I feel better when I leave a comment, when I share a post, when I'm like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Because there is a world that does not want to see women progress. And
Mm-mm.
there is a world that would love to see women's voices stifled and minimized. And so to see women stepping up in their niche, to be stepping out and just like being bold and courageous in who they are and really owning who they are and being confident. I'm like, hell yeah, you, that internalized misogyny, that like playing it small. When we look at confidence, it is ultimately that is the patriarchy saying women can't be anything but a mom, a wife, caretaker, fill in all the other words there.
All the other roles that we were assigned. It's so true. Everyone is insecure. Everyone has gaps in
Mhm.
their confidence, and that's okay. You don't need to be super confident. I always tell clients, and honestly, I tell myself, the best advice I ever received was fake it till you make it. If you don't know how to do something, say you don't know how to do it and then look it up. Or if you can fake it in that moment, fake it, right? If it's not going to harm anyone or it's not going to harm yourself, be
Mhm.
confident, be courageous, right? If I need to do something that makes me scared or if I feel insecure, I'm going to fully mask up. I don't care if I'm being authentic or not in that moment, right? If I need to get it done, I'm going to get it done. And
Mhm.
then I'm going to reflect and think about it. And then I'm going to integrate that into a part of myself. Right now, we're in this parts work world
Mhm.
again. Then I'm going to pull from that and create that characteristic or that quality within myself and build on it. You don't need to be this like super authentic, genuine, 100% you kind of person all the time. Yes, you want to be authentic and genuine to your own needs and your own interests and desires and vision for the future. But if you need to fake it sometimes, do it. Who's stopping you?
And
Nothing.
nobody
Literally
say
nobody.
and then look it up later. Like you said, if it's not harming the other person, if it's
Right.
really just preserving 30 seconds in that moment, hell yeah, I
Yeah.
got this. And then go
Yeah.
home and be like,
Ooh, I might need to research how to actually do this task.
just double check, make sure I got it 100. But yeah, we don't have to be confident all the time. I just made a post on TikTok. We don't have to be fearless either.
No.
We can actually be terrified and still say, you know what? I'm still going to do that thing
And
because I
it's
know it'll be
healthy to be
worth it.
scared. If you don't feel scared, then you also can't feel proud and
Mhm.
successful and accomplished. Our emotions sit on opposite ends of the spectrum. And if we don't feel one end of that spectrum, we can't feel the other.
Another plug, go watch Inside Out 2. It perfectly
So
encapsulates, and yeah, media can be sometimes really helpful.
I'm also noticing, I don't know about you, a lot more therapy in the media. It's fascinating, like movies and TV
Mhm.
and even like books now. I just read The Fourth Wing. I read the first book of the series. I don't know if you've read it, but my partner got me into romantasy books. So that's where I started. The main character is very much doing EMDR therapy. And she has this safe space, essentially, right? Safe space is this resource that we use in EMDR therapy to go to this place in your mind. It's like a
Mhm.
visualization exercise where you're completely at ease. So, as you're unpacking really difficult things and trauma in EMDR therapy, you can go into that safe space to regulate after the processing happens. This character in the book has a version of a safe space. She's not necessarily using it for the same thing to regulate, but she's
Mhm.
using it to access her power. How that's what we're talking about, right? Female empowerment. If you need to mask to access that power and to not let the fear consume you and control you, do it.
Yeah. There is a healthy level of avoidance that does
Yes.
exist and is helpful. And there is a healthy level of masking that exists. It can be super helpful in
It's a,
getting, it's a tool. Everything's a tool in moderation.
exactly. You just have to learn how to control it and use it
Mhm.
consciously.
Laura, this was so much fun. Thank you for joining me this evening. I have been asking all of my guests this season, what is your commitment to yourself for 2025?
Oh my goodness. I think honesty. So I started 2025 with a very different vision. And I'm now being really honest with myself about what it is that I want in the present day and then what it is that I want out of my future. And I'm pursuing that instead of boxing myself into something I think I should be doing.
I love that. How can people find you? Where can they find you if they are interested in working with your practice or just getting to connect with you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram. It's at lauracaruso.therapy. I'm a New York licensed therapist, so I see clients in the state of New York. And then I also run a low fee, affordable therapy practice in the state of New York as well. So we have sessions starting at $70 per session. And that's called psychotherapy. And I think the website is wellpsychnyc.com. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I have a podcast called Safe Space, but everything is on my Instagram. So start there and you'll get the link in bio for everything else.
Yes, everything will be linked in the show notes. Laura, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you all so much for tuning into this episode. Make sure you tap the bell to stay in the loop with new episodes dropping every Friday. If this episode spoke to you, I'd be so grateful if you left a review. It helps others find the show and reminds me why I keep showing up. And if you want to keep the conversation going, come hang with me on socials at Healing with Jasmine. We're healing out loud together.